Ja, och då har turen kommit till Initiator Pharma och vi vänder oss över, jag tror att vi rör oss till Danmark, and we're actually switching over to English because we're welcoming Claus Elsborg Olesen, CEO of Initiator Pharma. Welcome, Claus.
Thank you very much. And even though the Danish company is Danish, I'm right now in the US presenting out of San Diego. So there's a little bit of time difference. So
okay.
if I look tired, that is probably why. But actually, it's really exciting to be here today and give an update of what we are doing in Initiator Pharma and how we are progressing well here. So the usual disclaimer before going into the actual presentation. So in Initiator Pharma, we are dedicated to deliver and create shareholder value by actually creating medicine that actually helps patients in need. Patients actually out there who actually on a daily basis need to have relief from either pain or sexual dysfunctions or other indications that we are looking at. We have 3 clinical programs ongoing. I'll get back into those a little bit later. And we have a very cost-efficient setup where we actually, with a modest investment, can read, the really true inflection points of clinical development. We are founded and managed by an experienced team of life science entrepreneurs, supported by specialist investors, sharing the same vision in value creation of such a company as Initiator Pharma. So we are corporate profile. We are, as we said, a Danish company. We are headquartered in Copenhagen, and we are listed on the First North. We recently announced a direct financing of 20 million from Adrigo and Link, and now we have the rights issue upcoming fairly soon with another 40 million that is fully guaranteed. And that's actually will secure the finance of the company well into 2024. So a good solid financing here, allowing us to deliver on the many projects that we have ongoing. So we have about 4,000 shareholders, and where, you can say Link and Adrigo are significant investors in the company, but also specialist investors, showing that we are actually taking this step of combining a strong retailer base together with the future of institutional investors. We have raised, if you include the ongoing rights issue, 190 million Swedish, 10 million in soft funding, and then we made a deal back in the day with Mac for worth 23 million Swedish crowns. So as I said, we have an upcoming subscription. We posted the prospectus recently, and you see here the dates are from this rights issue, where we invite all existing shareholders to take part in Initiator Pharma's expansion of the shareholders of number of shares, and you can find more on our homepage, and you can also find the prospectus. And we're looking forward to complete this towards the end of June or the beginning of July. So looking at the team, besides I said we are, of course, a very seasoned people who's been doing this for a long time. I would like to, at the last AGM, we voted in Gunilla Ekström, so had 30 years of neuroscience expertise in pharmaceutical R&D from her time in AstraZeneca and in the multiple biotech companies that she's been a co-founder of. And we are really happy to welcome Gunilla to the board. She brings and builds even to a strong board, where we had a lot of strong emphasis, with Magnus Persson chairing the board, but also now bringing in, more specific expertise in neuroscience and development of product in this area. You can see in the leadership team, I mentioned it a few times, but recently got on Christina Gullberg, joined the team, and together with Michael Thompson, they are actually putting in a lot of effort, making sure that the projects that we are doing in the clinic are running in a proper way, and also the evaluations of some of the pipeline projects that we're looking at is done in a way that we actually can create value for the company and for the shareholders. Looking at the pipeline, the clinical stage pipeline that we are working with, I have here listed all the programs that we're looking at, and you can say the first 3 programs, the IPET 2015 for organic erectile dysfunction, is in a phase 2B. We'll get back to the details of that study later. Then we have an ongoing study in IP 2018 for the psychogenic ED, and that's a 24 patient. I'll also get back to briefly later in the presentation. And then the recent addition to the program, the IPT and 21 trial, which is actually where we're taking one of the drug compounds, the 2015, and we want to use it in neuropathic pain. And we recently completed the phase 1 pain challenge study, and I'll get back to that. So that's the clinical programs. Then you can say in the discovery stage, so before going to clinic, we have a IPDP 2015, IPNP 2015, that we are looking at and kind of the same modality as the three other pipelines that I mentioned. They're looking at maybe be used for treatment of addiction, pain, and other things. And those two compounds, we have a collaboration with NIDA, evaluating if they can be used for addiction. But in parallel to that, of course, we're exploring if there still is another utility for these compounds. So not only hanging it up on the collaboration with NIDA, but we are super excited to have this collaboration with National Institute of Drug Abuse in the US, again, looking into the good safety profile that we have seen of our compounds so far in the clinic. And recently we announced that we are taking in an option agreement on a pain asset that is a phase 2-3 ready asset. And we are working on that, and we'll come back in the fall or late fall with a more specific plan for this when we have evaluated this asset well enough. So you can see a very unique pipeline with targeting multiple high unmet medical needs. So why modulate these monoamines, and what is it relevant for? You can say for patients and also for Initiator Pharma. Well, we know the monogenic system is a network of neurons throughout the body that's actually using monoamine neurotransmitters to regulate a lot of processes such as emotion, arousal, mood, sexual functions, and specific types of memory. It's been a validated technology, so we've been targeting this for decades, targeting the levels of monoamines, for example, for the treatment of depression and pain. However, a lot of the compounds that is actually used there has been a bit too rough. So actually, they're doing too much of one thing. So you actually get some of severe side effects that you want to really avoid. Sexual dysfunction, some of them lead to toxicity, and some of them have cardiovascular complications. So again, even though you can say the MOA, the targeting the monoamine levels is a very, very powerful way of providing relief to patients, it needs to be done in a good manner where you actually avoid having too many of these undesirable side effects. And this is exactly what we do in Initiator Pharma. We develop a new generation of monoamine modulator compounds that actually have this, mostly efficacy and less of the undesired side effects as we have seen with the other compounds in the market. So in 2022, we're going to have multiple inflection points. And I actually said here on the first one, we're going to have the pain challenge trial readout that is completed. We're going to complete the phase 2B trial for the IP 2015 program. We're going to have the readout of the IP 2018 phase 2A trial. We're going to complete the product development of IP 2015, which is a new formulation of the 2015 compound, providing us with an even more optimized profile for targeting organic erectile dysfunction and also for the neuropathic pain program. And then a potential exercise for this drug asset that is phase 2B3 ready within the pain field. So again, we are maximizing shareholders' values by having short lead times with cost-efficient setups. And actually, we have a very structured approach. So we always you can come to a go, no-go decision point, making sure we avoid spending a lot of money on something that's not going to deliver value into the company. So this is why we have such a balanced portfolio, and this is what we're going to continue doing in the future. So looking at erectile dysfunction, we know that erectile dysfunction is hitting more than 400 million men by 2025. And you can say we are focusing on the patients that do not respond to standard of care. So we're not competing with any of the generics out there. We are going in and taking the patients that do not get relief today. And this represents 30 to 40% of all men suffering from ED. So it's a significant market. So looking into the pipeline that we have and the clinical pipeline we have in the erectile dysfunction field, we have the 2015 trial ongoing. This is what we call an intercourse study with 120 patients. I'll get back into the little bit more details, but it's actually, this study is partly financed through a collaboration together with MAC. So that's the CRO who's conducting the experiment for us. And upon the completion of this study, they would actually convert their cost for the trial into shares. And when the deal was made, it was actually made at 7.5 Swedish crown, which at that time was about 70% premium to the share price. But this is probably pretty close to where we are today. Then we have the IP 2018 trial. This is in psychogenic erectile dysfunction. So remember that the organic one, you can say, is what happens to us when we grow older. And you say you lose the capacity to have blood enough flowing to the penile tissue, whereas the psychogenic EEVs for patients that often also suffer from mild depression or low self-esteem or anxiety. So you need a different compound with a different profile. And this is exactly what IP 2018 have. This is a phase 2A trial where we include 24 patients. It's a 3-way blinded crossover study. So we get 2 doses of our compound plus a placebo. And what we're doing here is it's not an intercourse study. It's like the phase 2A that we ran originally for 2015. So it's actually a study where we visual stimulation with a video, erotic video, then we measure with the Richter apparatus on what is happening. Do we see effects here? And also, what we are getting out of this, we're getting the frequency of erections. So when we have this study completed, we'll take all the data and we'll assess it just like we did with the IP 2015. And based on that, we'll decide on how actually we will proceed with the 2018 program. So I said both trials are progressing well. IP 2015 started, you can say, at the backside of the COVID, whereas IP 2018 has been in the midst of the whole COVID. And this has been really tough for the patients in this segment, suffering also from depression, the mild depression that we have included in the trial. So we have, all the time had a slower recruitment rate than we expected, as we have announced to the market earlier. However, we think it's really important to keep the integrity of this study, not just trying to finalize it as fast as possible, just including some patients that do not fulfill the criteria. We want to make sure that the data that we get out of this study is actually something we can use and actually is you can say is meaningful for the study design that we have done. But we are still seeing good recruitment going into this, and we expect to finish these, as I said, as fast as possible. Looking a little bit more in detail on the organic ED trial, the 2015 trial. So this is done at 7 sites. It's 120 patients, as I mentioned, in 3 groups. So we have high level of IPET 2015, low dose, and then we have a placebo. And what's really interesting, this design is something that's validated, something people have done before. This is similar designs as been seen when Viagra and Cialis was developed back in the day. And also looking at how we're actually doing this, we actually have 4 dosings with the patients, so they come in 4 times and get a dose of our compound. And of course, this is a phase 2 trial, so safety and tolerability are endpoints, but also we are using this erectile function domain score. So this is actually, it's a questionnaire, and it's actually also you can say the endpoint that will be used in the registration trial, or at least it was the endpoint that was used when Viagra and Cialis was approved. So this is a questionnaire, not only looking at the physical capacity of getting an erection, but also getting, how's the sexual desire, what was the orgasmic function, what was the satisfaction with the intercourse, and so on. In parallel to that, some subgroups of the patients here are actually going through the erotic movie challenge, just like we did in the phase 2A study. We have semen assessments also to look at the safety for the future. And then we are looking at the PK-PD relationship in a subgroup of patients, trying to understand how do we improve this new drug formulation of IP 2015 we have developed, and how do we actually help both the patients in the best possible manner. So turning to the last program, looking at neuropathic pain in the IP TN21, we're looking at it's a trigeminal neuralgia trial that we are envisioning to be used in. But we started up a little bit different. We started evaluating what was the perfect pain indication to go into. And there's so many out there. There's so many with a high unmet need. So we started looking at pain indications where we felt that dopamine, which is the primary function of the 2015 compound, would be useful. And we ended up selecting trigeminal neuralgia here. It's a rare disease. It's touching the trigeminal nerve that goes down all through your face. And, the attacks are suddenly, it's extremely painful. They're very short. And it's like a superficial pain, and it's very stabbing. It's really, really severe. You can say the pain burst lasts from usually a few seconds up to 2 minutes. And for some patients, it happens once or twice a day, and some of them up to 50 times a day. So there's really, really a tough pain here. So up to 50% of the patients, actually don't see a relief of pain in between the attacks, but have you could say, a more chronic pain profile. So looking at it, we estimate it's between 4 to 15 out of 100,000 that that's being affected by this. It's twice as common in females than men compared above the age of 50. And you definitely see that it's not so much in the youth, but it's more in the population of the elderly or plus 50. So it's actually the pain is so severe and it affects many of the, you can say, daily normal functions like touching your face, talking, eating, drinking. And also we see that, together with this indication, we see a lot of anxiety, a lot of depression, poor sleep patterns, and it's really affecting also the mental health of these patients. It's often referred to as suicidal pain because it's such a severe pain, and people simply don't know where to put themselves in this. So this is a devastating disease with limited or no effective treatment available. So the treatment and the standard of care today is, you can say that if you can find out why the nerve is triggering, so you have some kind of, you can say, tumor or blood vessel that is pressing the nerve, then you can go in and do a decompression surgery, relieving then the nerve for the pressure from the blood vessel or from the tumor, and then you can say that the patient will then be relieved of the pain. However, about 70% of these surgeries actually requires additional treatments. So you can say that this is not very efficient, but also for the patients where we do not see anything touching the nerve, where the only pharmacological treatment we have is carbamazepine, an old anticonvulsant that actually has, now we talked about the side effects before, has a lot of undesirable side effects. And it actually we're seeing is wearing off. And as you see, as one KOL has estimated, probably only about 30% of the patient can be maintained on carbamazepine. So they are always looking for something else out there. And actually, we see it, a lot of the patients simply quit the medical therapies because of the side effects, while intolerance is particularly common in the elderly population. So there's a need, and also we can see that with this pharmacological treatment, people are trying to make up cocktails, taking multiple other painkillers, trying to see if they can provide them some relief from this. And this is where Initiator Pharma is going to bring in a new treatment. So the study that we just completed recently and announced the top-line results of was a 4-way crossover. So with a high-low dose of IP 2015, and then we use a placebo control, and then of course pregabalin as an existing neuropathic pain compound with efficacy. So the patients, were challenged with the capsaicin under the skin, inducing pain here, and then we ran a whole battery of pain tests on these patients and evaluating that. So the results that we announced was just some of the top-line results. We are getting the full report in about a month's time, and then we'll start evaluating all the data from that and come back to the market that time and providing a more relief. But we were actually really excited about this trial, because this is actually the first time that 2015 has been used in patients for pain. So you can say what we're comparing it with is pregabalin that had been used for centuries, or not centuries, but for decades, used for pain, providing pain relief. So they know exactly how that works. And actually, we saw that we demonstrated statistically significant effects on allodynia, and we showed dose-dependent effects on measured pain parameters. And you can see that we almost met it on hyperalgesia. You can see it at 0.051. So again, very, very strong data indicating that we actually have a compound that has some meaningful effect in the pain setting. And this is something that we're going to take all this data, compile it together, and say, okay, do we need to change the PK profile? Do we need to change the dosing regime of the compound before we actually go into, you can say, the clinical study for trigeminal neuralgia? So our plan after the proof of principle is to now go into a phase 1 MAD study, so we can give the compound multiple times that is required for going into the pain study for TN patients. And then we're really evaluating what is the best way we can demonstrate the effectiveness of our compound in patients suffering trigeminal neuralgia. This is something we're discussing with KOLs, both in the US and in Europe, trying to understand, what is the right endpoint to look at, what is the right population to include here. And this is something that we will evaluate over the coming months and starting designing what is the trial going to look like. Also, it's really important that the strategy or the design we come up with actually fits with a way to drive forward this program in the fastest possible manner, but potentially drafting up a phase 2B, 3 protocol, so we can actually get faster to a pivotal trial within the TN setting. And here we are working together with a world-class regulatory strategy and supporting Frank Szymanowski, who's been with the FDA for many years and actually was one of the founding fathers of the Orphan Drug Act at that time. And we're really happy to work with him and together with the KOLs and our own expertise in-house, we're actually building a really strong platform here for the future. And it's really important for me to say again, we are doing this so we can provide relief to the TN patients worldwide, and they also need to be heard in this so we can design the best possible design. So why invest in Initiator Pharma? As I said, we have multiple upcoming value inflection points. We just reached the pain. We are maximizing the value of the pipeline that we have, which is safe drug candidates with a broad clinical utility, both for organic and sexual dysfunctions. We are operated by a highly experienced and proven team. you can say the financing of the clinical programs that are ongoing is secured, and we also now secured the running of the company well into 2024, and putting us in a really strong position in this tough market that we see today. Also, I think what's really important is that we are actually working with, something that's very attractive from a risk-reward profile. We see that we are working with validated targets that we know, where we know what the function is when we target them. And it's not only us, it's also been validated by other companies that has been in this area, but they had to stop their development as they did not have the safety profile that we are seeing. And then actually we are looking at, clinical proof of concept, making sure that what we are having is actually having an effect that is meaningful to the patients. And again, I would like to repeat that the short clinical trials actually allows us with this modest investment to reach significant value inflection points for different indications. So we are delivering therapeutics for patients in need. So come join us in the development of innovative therapies to treat sexual dysfunctions and neuropathic pain. And with that, I would like to say thank you.
Can you hear us, Claus, supporting you?
Yes.
That's great. Okay, first of all, I want to say, of course, you can all ask questions by SMS or writing right by the video window where you are watching us right now. So we actually do have some questions coming in for you, Claus. So this is the first one. Estimated market value of diabetes and erectile dysfunction syndrome, and is this figure growing?
So you can say that the overall number of the ED market has actually been declining because the PD-5 inhibitors has been going off patents. So you see that there's less value in that. But what we see really interesting is that we see an increase in the number of compounds being sold. So there's still a large need out there. We also see that even though patients are very well treated for diabetes, they still have these sexual dysfunctions in that pain segment. So I definitely think that for the future, we'll see more of this as we get more people suffering from diabetes. We'll actually see more population in the future for taking our drugs, yes.
Okay, and then another question, possible side effects of carbamazepine?
Yeah, so carbamazepine is an old anticonvulsant. So some of the side effects is disorientation, improper balance. It can also be related to cardiovascular complications. So it's a compound that is not very nice to take. So it is a dirty drug that you would like to avoid. And we actually, when we speak to the patients, they're saying, yeah, but they don't like it. First of all, because of the side effects, but second of all, they get the relief that they expect from it.
Okay, and things are happening, as we could understand from your presentation, lots of things going on. And one of the things going on is the rights issue. So you said that with this, the financing of your ongoing clinical programs is secure, is that right?
Yeah.
So how far does that take you in time?
So you can say, so the financing we have now is running into 2024. We're going to read out of the phase 2B trial. We're going to read out at the end of the year. We are going to include the last patients and then have the final report about the turn of the year. And then at that time, you can say that then we're going to evaluate all that data and find out what is the best possible way to drive this project forward. With the, you can say with the 2015 compound in pain, now we just completed the phase 1 trial. So again, here we will actually get the final data coming out in Q3. And when we evaluate that, of course, we will start finding out how to design the phase 2 trial in that asset with the pain patients. But we cannot start that before we complete the MAT. And that is something that we're working on now. And I expect to have that completed sometime in the beginning of next year. So we then can continue into patients. So you can say that, so the studies that I mentioned here are financed. You can say the TN study with patients including is not financed at this time, but that's not coming out before mostly in the beginning of towards the end of next year. But with the money we have an option to either finance that or do other things with the money. So I think that we're in a good position there.
And then also, it seems like you found your recipe for success, as you described it, that you have this process that you think is really sharp. And one of them is like you have a very structured approach to go or no-go decisions. That's really interesting. We all need that in our lives. So how do you do that more concretely?
Yeah, so it's kind of, when we look at this, you can say, and it comes back to the way we are thinking about what we do. We're going to be working with something that we feel is validated. So we are working with targets that we know. It's not a new really interesting target where we had to pour in 100 or 200 million to generate enough data to show that this potentially could have an effect. We know that the dopamine is important in both the pain setting and also in the sexual dysfunction setting. Then we also know from other clinical studies that have been looking at these effects of dopamine actually have these effects. So you can say that again, if we don't deliver data that is actually supporting by the scientific background or scientific proof that we believe that when we started the project, then it's actually one of those stopping points where we're saying, okay, then we should maybe reconsider, is this the right thing to do? Because what is the likelihood of us being able to demonstrate that this will work in patients? So I think that this is where we are trying to do that, making sure that all the time that the science in the animal models is actually translatable to the human setting, and also what we see in the human setting is not something that we say, maybe this will work. We actually need to see data that is actually convincing us and potentially also future partners with some of these assets that this is something that we can develop into meaningful patient treatment.
And I guess this is also risk reducing in your development. But I mean, your field, I mean, it's a high risk business. How do you work to reduce those risks for your investors?
I think that what we're doing is maybe a little bit of repeat of what I said before. So we know, for example, for sexual dysfunction, we know sexual function is driven by the release of dopamine. And that is not only us, that's been shown also in animal models. It's been shown in humans with various scans published by some of the world leading groups within sexual function. We also know there's compounds that actually have, an effect on the dopamine, signaling cascade, as I mentioned, actually can increase the sexual function. However, the compounds that have been developed here, so this was, for example, an agonist developed by Pfizer back in the day, had to be withdrawn from the study because they simply had too many side effects because they used a different MOA than we did. So you can say we are building on that legacy of knowing that dopamine is important. Then now we have dosed the compounds and we are seeing that we have a tolerability profile of the compound that's desirable. And that is significant de-risking because you can say a lot of times you're not sure if this actually will lead to any relief for the patient, but that we know it will here. So now we just need to find the best way of administering that.
Also, you mentioned several times here you're a very competent team, and that you're also, as we talked about, identifying new indications in the areas of expertise within this management team. But I mean, how wide is this spectrum of competence? How wide spectrum of indications can you actually go for?
Yeah, I think it would be stupid of me or foolish of me to say that we have cover all fields of expertise, and that's also why we actually we are doing the right thing. And maybe this is a drawing back to when I did my elite sport back in the day and did the Olympic sailing. When there's something you're not good at, you find a coach who can help you. And we're doing a little bit the same here. So you can say when we know a lot about the development of small molecules in the CNS setting, that's what we are really strong on clinical development. We know a lot about monoamines. But of course, there's things in some of the pain indications where we don't know. We are not pain experts per se originally in trigeminal neuralgia. So here we reach out to KOLs, world-leading KOLs, getting their opinion and see what is it they see in the clinic. Because one thing is that we can come up with a program where we can see it in an animal model or we can give some kind of pain relief, but it also needs to be able to translate into the patients that are suffering from TN. So this is really important for us to making sure that we understand what is the patient need and how do we actually cover this best with the profile of our compound. So this is something, again, here we bring in expertise to support what we have internally. Also on the regulatory with Frank Sescanowski, we are using him for the regulatory support, and we do that in many cases. And you can say by not building an organization where we have all these competencies in-house, we're actually being very modest in you can say our overhead, our running cost. But I think what's more important is that when we go out, we can actually afford going out and find the best KOLs. We don't need to have a regulatory person sitting on the payroll, 200 days a year being paid by us, but we actually go out when we need it and find the best ones and have them helping us. And I think this is key to our success, making sure we always surround us with really top class individuals in driving our programs forward.
Okay, it sounds like you paved your way for a successful road forward. So thank you so much, Claus, and good luck.
Thank you very much and have a great day.
Thank you. Okej, och då